Hello, I'm Esther Gitu. Welcome to Africa 54. Here's what's coming up. Mobile internet access in Senegal is suspended for the second time after authorities ban a march against the decision to postpone February's presidential election. Young people in Eswatini are feeling the negative impact of a declining job market. And analysts say that using artificial intelligence responsibly can boost productivity across the continent, despite growing concern that new technology needs regulation. All this and much more coming up on today's Africa 54. Senegal's mobile internet access has been restored on Wednesday after being suspended Tuesday for the second time this month after authorities banned a march against the postponement of February's presidential election. President Macky Sall's decision to push the vote until December has plunged the nation into a crisis which has seen 3 dead amid clashes between protesters and security forces. This decision to cut internet service was severely criticized by rights activists and Senegal's major international partners, including the United States and the European Union.
I think we've gone beyond the stage of dialogue because you can't imprison thousands of young people and then call for dialogue. Who are you going to talk to? Even the most popular opponent, Ousmane Sonko, is in prison. So there is no point talking about dialogue. All we are asking him to do is to organize the election and let us choose.
The situation is unprecedented and Senegal has become a laughingstock. Everyone is talking about it because we've never had a situation like this before. What's more, the President of the Republic has put forward some pretexts, but I don't think they are strong enough to postpone the poll. There is this desire for a categorical change of regime because between 2021 and now, there has been an enormous amount of suffering and violence. Young people have been killed during demonstrations, even though demonstrations are governed by the Constitution. Ordinary citizens have the right to demonstrate, and during these demonstrations, there have been atrocities, there have been assaults. It's been brutal. Demonstrators were shot at point-blank range, and the images were atrocious.
We have heard the president hint at the possibility of a military coup, but we don't need one. We want democracy to reign in Senegal. We've seen the consequences of coup d'etat in Africa, and we don't want to experience them in Senegal. All we want is for a stable and transparent election to be organized so that we can choose the next president and have a peaceful changeover.
ECOWAS has sent a parliamentary diplomatic mission to Senegal to discuss the country's political situation. The World Health Organization is warning of a health crisis in Sudan as fighting between the army and the paramilitary rapid support forces continue. WHO acting representative Peter Graf says displaced people sheltering in overcrowded areas lack access to food, water and sanitation. Graf says the childhood immunization program is breaking down and infectious diseases are spreading, creating a perfect storm in a health system that is barely functional. The WHO says over 1 million clinical cases of malaria have been reported, along with 8,000 cases of dengue, 10,000 cases of cholera, and more than 5,000 cases of measles. And joining me now from Entebbe, Uganda, to talk about the toll the war in Sudan is taking on aid workers is Mohamed El Amin, the World Food Programme Communications Officer for Sudan. Mohamed, welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you. Good to have you here too.
Right. How has working in Sudan at a time of war impacted you personally?
That was a challenging experience, an emotional roller coaster, if you may say. Before the war, we were supposed to help the victims of food insecurity. But suddenly, when the war happened, and we all know that the war is not a selective event, it affected everyone. We became victims who were expected to support and help other victims. And those people could be family members. And that's the atrocity of the war. It's not selective at all. It impacts everyone. And that has taken a heavy toll on our emotional and psychological status.
Right. Is there an event or an encounter that you have had with a Sudanese national in need that you couldn't get off your mind?
That has actually happened to me personally. A little cousin of mine and her mother were displaced to far north of Sudan. And a few weeks after the war, they called for help. But sadly, there were other locations who were severely food insecure. And me personally, I couldn't reach out for anyone to assist me in this because, as I've said, war has impacted all of us. And thus, that was one of the situations where you feel like your hands are tied. And especially when it's about a very close family member who's in need and you are working for an organization that supports people. But still, war has impacted a huge number of people. The displacement is just skyrocketing day by day. Children, mothers, everyone is being impacted, and we cannot reach out to them.
So, Mohammed, what kind of conversations do you have with your colleagues going through similar experiences, and where do you turn to for solace, for counseling?
Well, while it might seem depressing if anyone hear the colleagues speaking to each other, but it's actually helping a lot. And that's because most of the conversation is about a family member who got detained, someone who got killed, or someone who got robbed or harassed by any of the conflicting parties. However, talking to each other, and thanks to WFP for availing an in-house counselor, it helps us a lot to go through these difficult times. However, I still believe that there is a lot to be done to save the humanitarian workers.
Mohammed, thank you very much for sharing what you as humanitarian aid organization workers go through. Mohammed El Amin is a World Food Programme Communications Officer for Sudan. South Africa on Tuesday urged the International Court of Justice to place more legal pressure on Israel to halt a threatened offensive against the densely crowded Gaza city of Rafah. Pretoria has already made a complaint against Israel in the ICJ, alleging that its assault on Gaza amounts to a breach of genocide convention. The court has yet to rule on the underlying issue, but on January 26th, it ordered Israel to ensure that it takes action to protect Palestinian civilians from further harm and to allow in humanitarian aid. Recent advances by the M23 rebels in eastern Congo pose a significant threat to the city of Goma. Despite Rwanda's denial of accusations that it backs M23, Congo, Western governments, and reports from a United Nations expert group strongly indicate that the rebel group receives support from Rwanda. For more insights, Zihindula Mulegwa, attorney and former spokesman for ex-President Joseph Kabila, spoke to VOA's Paul Ndiho.
We have 9 neighbors as a country, and one of the neighbors is not satisfied with the status quo, and the neighbor wants to exploit the eastern part of the DRC economically. So this is really the big problem in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Rwanda would say it's about their security. No, it's not about, there's no threats coming from the DRC to Rwanda. This is all about the economic issues where Rwanda is coveting what is in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, so they want to have access to minerals and so on and so forth.
Rwanda has categorically denied some of the accusations leveled against them. They say, in fact, to your point, that there are a lot of security concerns are coming from Congo. And as a result, they have to protect their citizens, they have to protect their territory.
I will give you one simple example of Rwandan action in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Congo had 3 drones at the airport in Kavumu, which is in the province of South Kivu. And those drones have been shot down by ground-to-air missiles. So I don't know where a ragtag army like rebels would do that, except for the fact that this is a proxy force that is working with Rwanda. So I don't know how else, where a ragtag army like the M23 would be able to have access to this type of weaponry. So we know it's Rwanda. There's been a lot of reports from UN experts about Rwanda involvement in the Democratic Republic of Congo.
How about the protests that we see? People burning American and other European flags. What could have led to that?
I think the population is frustrated. I think they are taking their anger at the wrong person right now. And they are taking their anger at the Americans and other people. But this is not it. I mean, I think the Congolese people should direct their anger towards the Congolese government, which is unable to defend the sovereignty of the Democratic Republic of Congo.
I was personally in some of those sports in May, and I looked at the Congolese forces, and there is no way Congolese forces are prepared really to defend the territory of DRC. You've been part of the establishment in DRC. What could be the problem? Why is it that the government in DRC has not invested so much in its defense forces?
You have hit the nail on the head. The problem here is not that we do not have soldiers capable of fighting, but soldiers are not taken care of. And you cannot expect a soldier to go fight when you don't give him the reason to fight. So what the government needs to do, they need to slash this new pay for members of parliament from $33,000 a month. That's ridiculous amount of money to pay a member of parliament whose job is just to legislate. And the soldier on the battlefield who is trying to defend the territory of the Democratic Republic of Congo is getting less than $100 a month. That's ridiculous, and that's completely unacceptable.
That was Zihindula Mulegwa, attorney and former spokesman for DRC, former President Joseph Kabila. The unemployment rate in Eswatini, a small landlocked country, remains at just over 24%, according to Statista, an online data platform. Jabuliso Nkampalala, a recent graduate, says young people are feeling the negative impact of the job market. Nukhanya Musi spoke with Nkampalala, who shares the challenges she faces and how she has managed to overcome the odds.
Njabulo Happy Nkampalala, and I'm from Lavomesa, from a place called Mbutu. I am from a family of 9. I have 6 brothers and 2 sisters, and then I'm the 3rd sister. I've been raised by my father and my siblings. And then I did my grade 10, grade 11. That is where I got pregnant. I am a mother of 1, and my son is 9 years old, so I got pregnant when I was at school, but I was able to continue with my studies. The reason I chose social work is because when I was growing up, I was exposed to abuse. Like, I was staying with different stepmothers, so they were abusing me physically and emotionally. So I didn't want other kids to be abused. So I took the initiative that I wanted to work where I'll be able to protect other children. Third year, it was a bit challenging because we had a period where the government wasn't giving us allowances, and it was tough for me to be able to cope again. So I then sat down and thought of a way that would help me to make money. So I then started to have a business idea, and the cleaning and washing business, and that's how everything started.
Because of the high unemployment rate in Eswatini, looking at the statistics from last year at 49.77, Shosolik Sasaleli Kabazile is at the center of it all, addressing the issue of high youth unemployment. The way that we do it is working towards having youth generating an income so that they can better support their families, their communities, and the Eswatini as a whole.
monthly I make to about 2,000, which is enough for me, like to be able to pay my rent, to be able to buy food, even though sometimes it is challenging because I have a son and I'm a single mother. Like, he depends mostly on me, so sometimes I have to cut that money and send it to him so that they can be able to buy whatever that he needs at that moment.
On Thursday, we'll share the experiences of 3 graduates from Zambia as they search for jobs. Still to come, art originating from Africa is exploding in popularity right here in Washington. Stay with us.
This week on Straight Talk Africa. As clashes intensify in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo between the Congolese army and M23 rebels, thousands of people are fleeing towns and villages near Goma. In Kinshasa, protesters are accusing the West of supporting neighboring Rwanda. They allege Kigali backs the M23 rebels. Rwanda denies it. Join me, Haiti Adams, for an in-depth look into the turmoil in the Eastern DRC on the next Straight Talk Africa.
Health, wellness, sport, beauty, medical breakthroughs. Healthy Living cares about your well-being. What are the main health concerns in Africa and around the world? Find out the latest on coronavirus. Connect with our experts and ask them questions.
How long does the virus stay?
Join me, Lino Khmoudou, in Washington every week on Healthy Living, right here on VOA.
In other news, Kenyan police say they have recaptured Kevin Kang'ethe, whose escape from custody made headlines following his arrest on suspicion of murdering his girlfriend, Margaret Mbitu, in the United States. Police Chief Adamson Bungei says Kang'ethe was hiding out at a relative's home on the outskirts of Nairobi, where he was found late on Tuesday after a days-long manhunt. And Ghanaian Finance Minister Kenneth Ofori-Atta has been relieved of his duties by President Nana Akufo-Addo and replaced by Mohamed Amin Adam, the Minister of State at the Finance Ministry, as part of a cabinet reshuffle. Under Ofori-Atta, Ghana has been restructuring its debt as the nation tries to emerge from its worst economic crisis in a generation. Art originating from Africa is exploding in popularity in the Washington, D.C. area, with curators and galleries who are featuring more and more fine artworks from the continent. VOA's Anthony Labruto reports.
Featuring primarily West African art, the African Art Beats Gallery in Washington's Cleveland Park neighborhood was started in 2019, just before the COVID pandemic, by curator Anne Beatrix Keller Samedeni.
I wanted to show that this scene existed, that on this continent there was this very bright, very dynamic art scene, and that they painted beautiful painting that very often you wouldn't know they're from there. So this is why the gallery was born. And in fact, it was supposed to be a virtual gallery, but to launch the virtual gallery, I thought, okay, let's empty everything, because it was a home. Remove all the furniture, all the rugs, and just put artworks on the walls.
A Tunisian native, Samedeni lived in Togo and Cameroon before coming to the United States to work as a translator and interpreter.
And I made a point, in fact, of visiting them in their studios. I befriended many of them. Then when I went around, when I visited the region, I would go to Senegal, Côte d'Ivoire, Benin, you know, because I kind of traveled around. Then I would also make a point to meet artists there. And many of them asked me to give them visibility once I would be back in America.
Each room of Samedeni's gallery brings together artists from West Africa who paint with a specific message or theme.
Here you have Gérard Gabayan. Gérard Gabayan is an artist from Senegal. Everything you see on the artwork is recycled. This painting is painted on burlap. The burlap is from bags that contain sugar or pepper. And then there is collage, so paper, charcoal, pastel, acrylic. All the writing you see is in Wolof, one of the languages of Senegal. All the art of Gérard Gabayan is about the environment. And Gérard started working on the environment far before we all talked about it.
Other artists featured, such as Pascal Conan, encourage social action or self-reflection through their pieces.
And he's really, for me, a success story because Pascal grew up in a slum in Abidjan. And he was very gifted. Although his father had no money, he hired someone at his church, an artist at his church, to work with Pascal, to teach Pascal about art. So, believe it or not, this is bleach and acrylic on denim. And his work is about us, where do we come from? Who are we? Where are we going? What is our social and environmental impact? He's very worried about pollution, e-waste pollution, irresponsible urbanization.
The African Art Beats Gallery also doubles as a home for Anne Beatrix and her husband, giving people a chance to visualize the art in their own homes before buying. It also gives Anne Beatrix the opportunity to get to know the individual style of artists.
And I wanted to show that this art wouldn't need to look African, so there are all these kind of prejudices or ideas we could have of what art should look like, and that's what I wanted to show, that there was this contemporary art scene and that these artists had the universal messages to share, and that this message, we have the same here, we have the same or maybe slightly different, but there is a connection between all of them.
African Art Beats is expecting to host young and up-and-coming West African artists for an open gallery exhibition this March. Anthony Labruto, VOA News, Washington.
Technological innovation and the advent of artificial intelligence continue to be a hot topic worldwide. As new technology emerges, it offers both an opportunity and a risk set to transform the industry. VOA technology correspondent Paul Ndiho is here to tell us more. Hello, Paul.
Thanks, Esther. Analysts argue that using artificial intelligence responsibly can boost productivity and economic growth across the continent. However, there is growing concern that this new technology needs regulation. Countries across Africa are looking for ways to regulate this fast-moving technology. For more insight, I spoke to Benga Sisan, Executive Director, Paradigm Shift, a Pan-African social enterprise working on digital inclusion and digital rights based in Lagos, Nigeria. Welcome to Africa 54.
Thank you for having me, Paul.
You are one of the experts when it comes to technology in Africa. There's been a lot of talk regarding regulating big tech. Let's get your thoughts on what you think about whether or not big tech should be regulated.
Regulation has always been a tool to create standards so that society can benefit from any new thing or something that has existed. And new tech is, emerging technologies, big tech cannot escape, the conversations. You can never regulate something before it starts. If you regulate something before it starts, then you kill it. You have to allow it to grow. Even big tech itself admits the fact that some form of regulation is required, especially when you have a novel area where everyone needs to agree on certain standards. A very example is all of the conversation around artificial intelligence. Of course, we need standards. We need ethical standards. We need standards that enhance trust. We need standards that make sure that it is not profit over people. It is profit, but with people in mind.
For the case of Nigeria, where you are, you had issues when maybe about 2 years ago, when the government decided to ban crypto, and they brought in their own cryptocurrency. But people figured out a way to walk around it, and they were able to continue using some of that crypto. Would it be fair to say that some of these regulators maybe also need to learn about this technology before they come and maybe try to regulate it?
You raise a very important point. The people who are deploying emerging technologies, they themselves are also still learning. So you can't just come in and say you want to ban this and ban that. You have to understand it. I think that one of the most important things that regulators, governments must understand is that when something new comes, you have to ask yourself 4 questions. Number 1 is, what is this? And you're not asking what is this because you're afraid of it. You're asking what it is because you then want to ask a next question. The next question is, how do we benefit from this as a people? How does the national economy benefit from this? How does the socio-cultural space benefit from this? How do jobs benefit from this? When you ask that question, then the third question is, how do we create standards that everyone can conform to, that everyone can benefit from? Not how do we control it, how do we create standards? And the fourth question, which is critical, is if something goes wrong, how do people seek redress?
Here in the United States, for example, we had lawmakers bring in big tech. They wanted to know what they can do or to work around to come up with legislation that can sort of put guardrails in place to make sure that when people are online, especially on social media, they are not harmed. How can African governments come up with that kind of legislation where they are trying to protect citizens from being harmed on the internet?
Yes. First of all, seeking to understand. Secondly, asking questions of how do we benefit. Thirdly, then building policy around standards and not control. And fourthly, making sure that if anything goes wrong, people can seek redress. This is the 4-step process that African governments can maximize.
What is required, let's say, to have proper legislation instead of legislating based on fear that some opposition party is going to use this technology to advance their cause?
If you legislate from a place of fear, if you legislate from a place of control, you are setting yourself up for trouble. And what do I mean by that? Whatever standards you create now to punish other people, whenever you go into opposition, because you will lose elections at some point. This is Africa. You will lose elections. The elite will gang up with another political party at some point and you lose elections. And when you do, those control tools, those surveillance equipment that you bought and invested in will be used against you. I tell government officials, this is the first law of reciprocity. Whatever you create as a weapon will be used against you eventually. So you must create standards that are favorable yet effective.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Paul.
Benga Sisan is the Executive Director, Paradigm Shift Initiative, a Pan-African social enterprise based in Lagos, Nigeria. That's our report. Back to you, Esther.
Thanks, Paul. Be sure to join Paul Ndiho every Wednesday for another tech report on Africa 54. And that's our show for today. Be sure to join and watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.